the end of time.
O'clock.
Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. Things look a little bit brighter than normal. No, I mean because of this. I think I'm gonna turn it down.
I think it looks good though.
You think?
Yeah, it looks good.
Well,
you know what it is?
I was farting around with it. What's that?
You got the blue wig on and you got the pale skin and you're reflecting more light. How much you want to bet?
Yeah,
it's bouncing. I'm
blinding everybody.
You're getting soft
out
bounce.
there.
Yeah, that's what it is. You got that fucking honky ice princess look on you today.
Right.
You look like someone off of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like some. Yeah, pretty. I'll tell you what, she's looking attractive. I'm walking in and she's wearing this little short fucking baby doll dress. And she's got the hair and the boobs, and I'm just, man. And she's like, "Why you always wait till the show?" I can't control it.
So I'm sitting here trying to do a last minute read on my
Men
notes.
are very visual. We are visual creatures. You didn't look like that when you came home from
Maybe
work.
I should just start looking like a slob when I for the show.
If you look like a, well, then all the views go down. We used to get a shit ton of views when all the fucking thumbnails for the show were just Jenny with cleavage. We get a shit ton of. I actually had fucking.
I didn't make any. That.
You had some of it like that, fucking, and then because some of our longtime listeners, fucking, two of them said, "Yeah, really, I started watching it because Jenny had a fucking nice rack, man, fucking. But you guys are really cool. She's really smart, you know. But no, that was a great selling point back in the early days.
Well, I guess I'll have to. What?
See, well, it's okay.
I'll have to.
I'm just checking. Boob check. Boob check.
He's just
I gotta get to the fucking. I'm not even
look
streaming
at this.
it.
Look at this. It's just it's so ramshackle.
They're all coming in. They're coming into the show.
You just always wait until the last minute.
I'm busy.
Man,
I did so much shit today. I fucking cooked, worked in the garden, fucking went to fucking Starbucks for fucking 2-3 hours to chill out up the road. The close one here.
Oh yeah, you went to that one.
Yeah,
not the faraway one.
Yeah, this is the amateur one. The professional one's over there.
I've never been to this one up here.
It's
I'll have to
small.
go one of these days.
It's small.
Well,
but I go in there and I stick out like a sore fucking thumb. I love it.
Yeah,
I fucking love it. Yeah, they're like, what the fuck? But the okay, where's the?
We like to be the weirdos. We are the weirdos, Mister.
Yeah, pull that fucking bike up and just fucking come out with my armor and shit. And they're like, oh shit, man.
It's on.
People not trying to look at me and shit. You know? I'm like, all right, it's okay, people.
He's like, I might not kill you.
I've committed enough robberies for today. You guys are safe.
For today and murders.
Yeah, no problem. It's gonna be all right. Yeah. Your daughters will all be safe. You know. Yeah. Here we are.
All right. Yeah. Trey said Tom's right. Jenny's much brighter today. Yeah, I was farting around with the light, and also one of the lights that's behind the laptop. I have something on top of it, and it, for some reason, when I touched it, it changed colors because because that's how it does, I guess. So it might be that doesn't really affect too much over there that light, but it does kind of bounce off. So I don't know. I couldn't decide if I liked it, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm going with it.
Yeah. See, Trey says Tom's right. Jenny's much brighter today.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Trey also said, I love this topic. Yeah. I had several of those Scholastic Stranger Mysteries books. Yeah, so did I. That you get at school book fairs that covered this story. This is a great story. And honestly, I don't know. I know we did a Ghost Ships show before, a long time ago. And I remember that we covered, I know we talked about the Orang Medan, which is actually not real. It's just a fictional story that got completed into a real one. Yeah. And I think we talked about the MV Joyita, what's that one called? The Beichenko or whatever that one's called, the one that floated around for 50 years or whatever. We talked about that one, but
that was a real one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Orang Medan is the only one that's not real.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if we covered the Mary Celeste on there. I'm thinking not. But even if we did, I kind of feel I felt back then, it's that kind of needs its own show. And now here it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was one of the things, somebody said they saw this on In Search Of, which... that
was a creepy old show.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a creepy story. I kind of feel there's something really creepy about just abandoned places in general. That's why there's so much talk nowadays about liminal spaces and Even like analog horror where they do like back rooms, like with all those empty, and abandoned malls and stuff.
Yeah.
And but I kind of feel like it's 100 times creepier when it's a fucking ship. And there's not really, I mean, there's an explanation for what happened, but nobody really knows exactly what it is.
The whole ghost ship, a ship that just floats around out in the ocean just with nobody on it. That became creepy as fuck to me when I was a kid and saw an old B horror movie called Death Ship.
Yeah.
And it was about an old SS fucking interrogation ship of some sort. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was just a fishing trawler, a big ass fishing boat that the SS had taken over, and it was floating around out there. It was a big movie about it, and they were torturing people on it. I think it was like
didn't we review that not too long ago?
I don't know if we ever actually reviewed it. It's a pretty good movie. And some people at sea run into this thing, and it's just floating around out there, and there's fucking bodies on it and all kinds of crazy shit. And it's haunted too. Turns out it's haunted. And the SS captain is still in charge. Yeah. I think the crew is still in charge too.
Yeah. We did that because we
want to see that one again.
Yeah, Danny Rolling said you reviewed that film. Yeah, I thought we did. I thought we watched it and reviewed it just a few months ago, probably.
Not months, years.
No, it wasn't that long ago. I think we were at this house.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. We saw it at this house.
Yeah.
Might have been 15 months ago, 12 months ago, maybe a year ago.
Hugo said I really liked the beginning of Ghost Ship. The one where everybody gets cut in half by the thing coming down and that's other than that, I kind of feel like that opening scene is so great that the rest of the movie the rest of the movie is okay too, but it's like it's hard to top that. It's like they kind of blew their load like right at the beginning of the movie, and then they're like, now we don't know what to do. That was like so awesome. But this is the film with George Kennedy. He was the one that played the main guy.
It was called Death Ship, wasn't it?
Yeah. Because like I said, there's another one called Ghost Ship, which came out in the 90s. It was the 90s, right? The one where everybody gets cut in half at the beginning. Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But just the concept of a ship out there at sea, fully furnished, just rotting, basically drifting around aimlessly with maybe ghosts on it. And then later on, I just heard rumors that ships like that actually existed. Like when I was a teenager, I was hearing about that there were ships that were just lost at sea, nobody on them, floating around. And it might have been that one that was lost for 50 years that you said that people would see it every now and then.
Yeah, I think it was called the Bachinko or something like that. I think we talked about it on the Ghost Ship show. I think it got like stuck in the ice at some point, and then like the crew died, or I don't remember exactly all the details, but it's just like floated around for
and then
years and years.
Then there were stories, you don't know if it's true, but people would run into the ship and board the ship from their little boat or whatever, a little private yacht that they were on, and find all kinds of weird shit on there. And they couldn't stop the ship. They couldn't drop anchor or anything, so they just had to get back on their ship, and it drifted away, lost again. You know what I mean? They said, well, this is where we saw the ship. But by the time they send somebody over there, it's long gone. But weird shit like a ship filled with cannibalistic rats. That's one of the ones that I heard of. I don't know how long the biomass of rats could sustain themselves through cannibalism. That's got to be inefficient. That must have been a story.
You would think, because normally they wouldn't revert to cannibalism unless they were kind of like
So how could they reproduce and be cannibals at the same time? They would just eat themselves down to nothing, I guess, and then maybe it would grow, but there wouldn't be enough biomaterial on there to keep them doing that.
Right.
Unless there was some kind of food intake down in the damn bowels of the ship, maybe there was some fucking fish would come in through a hole in the side or something, but even that wouldn't be able to sustain anything.
Yeah, because it would just be like one fish going like, oh shit.
Yeah. Somebody sent us
Thank you, Bryce. You guys need a super thanks. That way people can drop you some money even if they miss the live stream. Yeah, we do have that. What's the word? Activated. Yeah. Old as Dirt says, I love stories like this.
We have it activated.
Takes my mind off my life. Thank you.
We have it activated on most of the shows. Some of the shows were not monetized.
Well, only a couple of them were.
Right.
I didn't monetize the Gary Webb one because I figured that was going to get demonetized anyway.
I would have just let them demonetize.
But but it's like a pain in the ass, and sometimes they're like, hey, we're going to take it down. And if it's a live stream, because normally what I do, the live streams, usually you have to wait I think it's 12 hours, and then you can download it. So usually as soon as I'm able to download it, I'll download it and back it up, because I do, I'll have a backup of it and I put it in my Dropbox, and then like I pull out the audio so I can put it on the audio podcast kind of stream or whatever. So I do have all the live streams still, but I'm always like scared that if something, like if we say something sideways or something like that, they're going to take the live stream down before I get a chance to download it, and then I won't have a backup. I have a backup of every single live stream we've ever done, though. I keep them. So, you know what I mean? So don't worry about that. Like if they get taken down, I could just put it right back up again. So yeah. Now, we have a couple of shout-outs that we wanted to get to before we get into the main part of the show. I don't remember if I think I thanked him before, but it might have been like on one of the, movie review shows or something like that. And I always like to thank people on the main show. Jonathan, who sent me a PayPal tip, a very generous one. So thank you very much, Jonathan. And also sent me a message about how much he enjoyed the show. So
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Also, I want to give thanks to Dermot, one of our listeners in the UK, for sending me an Amazon gift card so that I could rent Barton Fink, the Coen Brothers movie, which I haven't seen in a long time, because we brought that up when we were talking about Fargo.
All right.
And I was like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to watch that again, because that's a fucking weird as hell movie, and I haven't seen it in a long time. Speaking of weird as hell movies, last night Tom went to bike night, and I was like scrolling through all the movies, and I'm on Amazon Prime, and they had Being John Malkovich, and I was like, ooh, I haven't seen that like in so long, and I remember that being really good. Holy crap, I forgot how fucking bizarre and hilarious that movie is. I had such a good time watching that, or like rewatching it. Maybe I'll do a review of it, but I still have to do I have another movie that I have to review first before I do that, though. And also Louis, who always sends us awesome movies, and we still haven't done Breakfast Club yet. That's kind of the next one we got to do, but he sent us another movie today. We just got it, and here it is. It is the Steelbook edition.
Yes, indeed.
Of Training Day.
I don't know anything about this movie, but Louis got such good taste. He perfectly predicts what movie I'm going to like, so I already know I'm going to like the movie.
Yeah.
He's never been wrong. Everything he sent me has been top notch. Been some kind of Steelbook edition. I guess when you can get it, you can't always get it. He's always sends me and the quality of the movies are always fucking great. And he just predicts my fucking tone real well of what I like. Some of my favorite movies actually were ones that he showed me.
Yeah.
That he sent to me. Yeah.
Xanada said Training Day is Denzel's best performance. Yeah. I've heard that. I don't think I've seen it. I think I've seen scenes from it, but I don't think I've ever like sat and watched the whole thing. Yeah. But I've heard it was really good, and everybody says like Denzel Washington is really good in it.
Yeah.
And Trey said another one I can safely say Tom will love. Yeah,
that
I'm pretty
one?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like he showed. Who said that?
Trey did.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because he sent Pain and Gain, one of my favorite flicks.
I ended up really liking that too.
Yeah, Pain and Gain. I thought
that was a fucking crazy.
One of the best flicks.
And based on a true story.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Big Lebowski. He sent that. That fucker was awesome. I've never seen that.
See, which I would have thought that you wouldn't like.
No, I liked it. Fucking loved it. Fucking what was it? Collateral. The one with fucking Tom Cruise. Wasn't that called Collateral?
Yeah.
Yeah. The fucking where was the assassin? That fucker was off the chain too. Just everything he said is fucking awesome. Yeah. But that Pain and Gain is one of my favorites, man. Big Lebowski. Yeah. Real good.
Yeah, Mega said Pain and Gain is awesome.
Yeah, Pain and Gain.
It really is. I mean, we've watched it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I gotta see it again.
Like, it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Just like Beetlejuice and The Exorcist. Yeah. But yeah, so are we ready to start talking about the Mary Celeste? Yep. Now, you actually know a little bit about this case.
Yep.
So
studied it a long time ago.
Yeah, and I feel like Smithsonian, I read an article about this earlier today, like in the Smithsonian magazine, where, I mean, they know, I'm not going to say they know what happened, because obviously, you can't go back in time to like 1872 or whatever and like figure out what it was that happened, but I don't know. I'm going to say like what they came up with is probably pretty close to what happened. I mean, because there's lots of different things that could have happened, but every single one of them has things about it that aren't, because I feel like Kevin Smith said earlier that he was going with the pirates theory, and I was thinking about that too. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, maybe it doesn't make sense.
No, they don't rob the place blind.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I should note too that the Mary Celeste, I kind of feel like more spookier, more mysterious details kind of got added later on. And some of that was due to, like, some of that happened in the early 20th century, and some of that is attributable to good old Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote a short story several years later, like after the disappearance of the crew, and it was a short story about the Mary Celeste, even though he changed the name of the ship to the Marie Celeste. But most of the names and stuff were the same, and he came up with like some crazy, I'll get into that in a little bit, but some of the stuff that he came up with in there like became conflated with reality. Like, I've seen some versions of the story where they said, oh, they got on the ship and like dinner was laid out and all this stuff. It wasn't like that, or that there was like no damage to the ship, and there wasn't a lot of damage, but there was a little bit. It was like more than had been. It wasn't completely intact, the ship, you know what I mean? I mean, it was, but there was like some stuff that
it had been at sea for a while.
Right.
I mean, it's nowhere near. I mean, there's some creepy shit about this case.
It is creepy.
Yeah, I can imagine finding this ship at sea would have been fucking eerie. But I don't think it was anything paranormal.
Well, no, I don't either, obviously. But, and even though, obviously, some people are going to say, oh, alien abduction.
Or Bermuda Triangle type shit, or
Bermuda, yeah.
Yes.
Or Sea Monster. I've seen that one,
whatever.
too.
No, it wasn't anything like that. It was an emergency. Some kind of emergency situation broke out. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most likely.
Yeah, and they were doing what they could. They were trying to do what they could to save themselves and probably save the ship, and it didn't work out.
Mango said, I'm sure Hammer made a film of this in the 30s. Yeah, they did make one, and I think it was called The Mystery of the Mary Celeste. I don't think I've seen it, but there was one that had Bela Lugosi in it too, like playing the ship captain, and he was like a lunatic. But I haven't seen that one either. They've made a bunch of movies about this. I mean, and there's been a bunch of books written about it. Because for some reason, even though there's lots of ghost ships, but this one really kind of captured the public imagination. I don't know if it was necessarily because of the Arthur Conan Doyle story, because I think that came out like 8 years later. And that was really popular. Popular enough that, like I said, details from the story started getting like mixed in with the real story. But I don't know why this one caught on and other ones didn't. I guess just because they never really figured out like what happened and they never found anybody.
There's weirder, grosser shit than this that actually did happen. You can Google it in modern era, just where they found a ship adrift at sea. It had been out there like 5 or 6 years, and the dude's dead in the ship of a heart attack. Up on the table like that, died of a heart attack, but he's just mummified, covered in fucking mold, and you can definitely see that's a fucking dead dude. And that ship was out there like 4 or 5 years, just drifting around.
So spooky.
Real
because
spooky.
It's like, because then you kind of think that it would just be like dead quiet. All you would hear was like the rocking of the ship and like the wind, like seagulls and stuff, and then that dead body would just be laying there, like rocking back and forth. Basically. That's like so spooky.
Yeah.
Like thinking about that is like so scary.
Rain or shine, fucking through all the seasons.
Yeah, there's like all storms and stuff, and he's just in there like not moving because he's fucking dead. It's like that's really creepy. I don't know why that's creepy, but Camp Guy said like an old lemon molding in the refrigerator.
Exactly.
So he was still sitting there. So how long was? Well, wait a minute. What I was gonna say was like, how long was the ship out there? Because like 4 or 5 years. So, because you would think that like the storm would have come along and like knocked him out the chair or something like that.
No, he was.
Or was he wedged?
It was like a booth. like a booth where you eat inside.
Oh, okay, I got you.
You know what I mean? And he was. If memory serves, it was a booth.
Yeah. Okay.
Inside a boat.
Yeah.
A ship, and I think all the doors and windows are closed.
So it's not like he was just in a chair where he would like flop out.
And he was leaning forward on the table of the booth, and the wall was next to him. He was right up against the window.
Okay.
You're taking pictures of him. And I think part of the roof had caved in a little bit over time.
Yeah, probably.
It was out there for a while.
That blows my mind that like a ship can just like float around out there.
For like well, they float around for years in those fucking docks.
That's true. Without anybody steering it, you'd think. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the ocean's big.
It's big. There's nothing to hit.
And there's nothing to hit, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So let's start talking about the history of the Mary Celeste. Now, here was something that I didn't really know that much about until I started researching this show. But the Mary Celeste did not start out life as the Mary Celeste. Now, I've heard, I don't know a huge amount about like sailor lore and stuff, but sailors, particularly back in the 19th century, tended to be a very superstitious lot. And I kind of think that one of the no-nos is that you're not supposed to change the name of a ship. That's supposed to be like bad luck, I think. So this ship actually, like I said, it didn't start out as the Mary Celeste. It got its name changed like later on. And some people said, you know, that maybe had something to do with it. But it should be noted that a bunch of bad shit happened before it was even called the Mary Celeste. And it also had, I don't know how widespread this perception was, but the ship before it was renamed was kind of considered a little bit to be maybe cursed a little bit, just because some weird shit happened. I don't believe in curses or nothing like that, but I'm just saying that weird shit happened on the ship like prior to it being the Mary Celeste. Crowley said all ships back then were female. Yeah, we have a new person, Subjective Perspective Collective. Hey now, just subscribed. Glad to be here. Well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the Lunatic Asylum. Hopefully you enjoy the show. We're going off. I don't know if you've seen any of our other stuff, but we try to keep on topic, but we don't try very hard. So a lot of times we just kind of go off on tangents and stuff like that. Yeah. But you know what I mean. So all right. So before this Mary Celeste was the Mary Celeste, it was actually called the Amazon. And it was, they started building it in 1860 in Nova Scotia. Now, the ship, it was a brigantine, which has 2 masts, and her maiden voyage was in May of 1861. Now, when she started out, she was about 99 feet long, 25 and a half feet wide, and about 11.7 feet deep. Now, she was owned by, there were like 9 owners. There was like a consortium, like a company that owned it. And one of the guys that was one of the owners was a guy named Robert McClellan, who was the first captain of what was then called the Amazon. So on her maiden voyage, the Amazon went to a place called 5 Islands in Nova Scotia. And they were going to take a bunch of lumber across the Atlantic. They were taking it to London. So as he would do, the captain, Captain McClellan, he was supervising the loading of the cargo onto the ship. And he started not feeling too good. So he actually got really sick, and then he just got sicker and sicker and sicker. Now, when the Amazon actually got back to Spencer's Island, the captain died. So, Captain number 1, dead. There will be more, spoiler alert. But yeah, he just died of an illness after, you know, going on the maiden voyage. Which, like I said, a lot of people were kind of like, well, that's not good. Because, like I said, very superstitious. So anytime anything like that happens on a ship, they're going to be like, man, I don't like that. So the next guy that took over as captain was a guy named John Nutting Parker, which is a hilarious name.
Yeah, that's a porn name. John Nutting.
He's nutting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
John Nutting Daily.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
John Nutting Daily. Because that could actually conceivably be a real last name. You could just spell it D-A-L-Y.
Yeah. That's going to be my porn name.
There you go. Write that down.
I'll change it to Tom. Tom Nutting Daily.
I was watching, because some of you guys say you also watch Simon Whistler and his 40 bajillion YouTube channels. Seriously, the dude, I think he has like 30 different YouTube channels where he has like a crime one, he has like a paranormal one, he has like a mystery one. And he did like a 45-minute show on the Mary Celeste, and he was kind of laughing at that dude's name, and he said, I feel like nutting should be in like in quotation marks or something like that. And I was like, yeah, right, because he's like, that poor guy.
I don't know if that translates to any of our foreign audience. Nutting is a slang term for busting a nut.
Well, I mean, you know, I think they, well, obviously they thought, Simon Whistler is British.
Okay, so they have it there.
So they thought it was funny. He thought it was funny, anyway. but yeah. So he took over nutting.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to call him.
Yeah.
He took over as the captain. And
somebody else takes over nutting.
somebody else has
it's a threesome now. It's the devil's threesome.
Oh my god.
Say, man, I'm tired. You take over.
Oh, this is already going downhill. The discourse is going down with the ship.
It's like back in high school, me and Steve high-fiving each other. Go ahead, man. Your turn.
Danny Rowling said Tom's porn name should be Hard R. I do like the nutting thing though. That would be funny because I like it because it also kind of, like I said, it has like a historical precedent, like back to the so you can be like all like high-minded about it, which is kind of neat. So Nutting takes over as captain and, you know, kept on going to London, like I said, to do the timber. Now, while he was going to London, or either going to or coming back from London rather, he was in this this narrow passage like off of Maine and ran into some fishing stuff. Not a boat, but I think there was like nets or some other shit like that. So there was like a little debacle there. And then after they left London, they ran into another boat and sank it. So,
damn.
You know, this...
they rammed another boat.
They rammed another boat. Yeah, like accidentally. I'm beginning to think that Nutting was maybe nutting and not steering the ship.
Yes.
Perhaps. Maybe he should stop day drinking.
It was him and the cabin boy.
Because he's just running into shit. It's like, what? I can drive the boat. I'm fine. Pa-pow. Hitting the fish and shit. Hitting another boat. You sank my brig, you fucking asshole. Nutting. But yeah. Now, despite his hitting shit everywhere, Nutting, Parker was his last name, but I'm just going to call him Nutting. He actually was in command of what was then called the Amazon for 2 years. Now, during this time, the Amazon was in the West Indies mostly. And actually, in 1861, like late 1861, they think that when she was in France, that was when the very famous painting of her, if you Google the Mary Celeste, it's pretty much the first picture that'll come up is like a painting that was done of her. And they think that it was probably done in France in 1861. So the next guy that took over, like Nutting was fine, other than hitting everything, you know, Parker didn't die, at least like having to do with the ship. He died eventually, I'm sure, unless he's a vampire.
Yeah.
But so Nutting, he was, you know, on there until 1863, and then in 1867, or no, the next guy that took over was a guy named William Thompson. He was on there until 1867, like so for the next 4 years. Now during these 4 years, it seems like nothing untoward happened. Like I said, I'm not sure. I've seen like different sources say that even back then, like before it was the Mary Celeste, like it had a reputation for being cursed a little bit just because the first captain had died and then like it kept hitting boats and shit like that. Like shit kept going wrong. But I don't know how widespread that perception was, like I said. But during the 4 years that William Thompson was the captain, it seems like there weren't really records of a lot of weird shit. Actually, we're like, you know, fuck this noise. And they just, you know, they just claimed it as a wreck. You know what I mean? Because it was just would have been too expensive to fix it. So she was actually sold to a guy named Alexander McBean, who was, what's these names, man? Nutting McBean. Jesus Christ. Who was from Nova Scotia. And he bought it as a derelict. And I guess that's kind of like, that's what he would do. He would like buy these boats and like sell them on. So he actually ended up selling the wreck of the Amazon to another guy who was like a local businessman. And then that guy resold it to an American dude named Richard Haynes. Now, at the time, this was a wrecked ship, essentially. I mean, it was still a ship, but it had been kind of smushed on the rocks, you know what I mean? So Haynes paid back then money, $1,750 in back then money. And I looked that up. I was like, well, how much is that today? About 37 grand is how much that is for the wreck of the ship. And then he proceeded to spend in back then money $8,800 fixing it up, which in today's money is about $187,000. And he made himself the captain because that's kind of what you do. You buy a wreck, and then you spend all that money fixing it up, and you're like, I fucking run this shit. That's what I'm going to do. And at this point, this man here, Haynes, was the guy who, I guess he figured, since he had essentially, like, redid the boat, he's like, well, I'm going to rename it. Which, like I said, I've heard that that's kind of bad luck. You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but a lot of sailors do. So he went and renamed the vessel the Mary Celeste. Now, evidently, I don't think... okay, so this is my perception. That if you rename the ship, you have to have, like, a renaming ceremony, right? Like, it has to be, like, official. And I don't think he did that. Like, he did register it, like, you have to go through legal channels and everything like that, but he didn't have, like, a party or, like, an official renaming ceremony or nothing like that, which I think some people, like, pointed to as, like, ooh, that you shouldn't do that. But yeah, he was the guy that renamed it the Mary Celeste, because he was the one that spent all that money rebuilding it. Now, he didn't have it for very long, though. Old Haynes, because he wasn't paying the bills. So he actually, the boat essentially got repoed, the Mary Celeste. And at that point, it got sold on to another, like, group, like a consortium, which was headed by a guy named James Winchester. And during the next 3 years, the guys that had ownership of this, ship kind of changed out a bunch of times. Although Winchester was kind of the one constant. He actually did have a half share of the ship, like, throughout. Now, there's not really much record of what the Mary Celeste was up to during this time. It seems like it was just doing regular, trade runs and things like that, like a regular ship would do. Now, in 1872, early in the year, the ship underwent yet another, like, major overhaul. And it cost the consortium back then about $10,000, which is about $212,000 in today's money. And this renovation, actually, they made it a lot bigger. They actually made it, because remember I said it started out at 99.3 feet, and then they expanded it, they lengthened it to 103 feet, and then they widened it a little bit and deepened it by about 5 feet. And they also added a second deck and did, like, some other things. So they kind of, like, kitted it out, you know what I mean? Like, replaced a bunch of the wood and everything. So one of the guys, as it turned out, like, in October of 1872, that was kind of came on and, like, purchased some shares of the ship, was a guy named Benjamin Spooner Briggs, who was the guy that was going to be the captain on the Mary Celeste's doomed last voyage. Well, it wasn't really her last voyage. It was just the one where everybody disappeared, because they did find the ship and, like, it, they still used it, like, afterward. So Benjamin Briggs, he was from Massachusetts, and his dad was a sea captain, as was his brother. And basically, he was real Christian. He was very, very upstanding and, like, real into, like, reading the Bible and everything like that. He had a wife named Sarah Cobb, who was also his cousin, which, weird, but it was pretty common back then. And they had 2 kids, Arthur and Sophia Matilda, who I think was only 2 years old at the time of the incident. Now, Briggs was actually a very, very well-respected sea captain. Like I said, very upstanding. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. Now, ironically, given what ended up happening to him, which is kind of sad, but him and his brother Oliver, who, like I said, was also a sea captain, they were kind of getting to the point where, like, bro, I'm really sick of, like, sailing around the world, like, on ships and everything. Maybe we should, like, settle down, because they both had wives and small children at that point, and they didn't really want to be gone for months at a time. So they said, maybe we should, pool our resources and, kind of get into, like, a land business rather than, like, sailing around the world. However, that's, sadly, unfortunately for them, that's not what they did. They decided instead that they were each going to invest in a different ship. So Oliver invested in one, and Benjamin ended up, as I said, investing in the Mary Celeste. And Benjamin Briggs was the one that became captain of the Mary Celeste on her first voyage after she had been, substantially enlarged and kitted out. Now, this particular voyage was they were going to sail from New York City to Genoa, Italy. And basically they were going to take a cargo. What the cargo was about 1,000, like 1,000 plus barrels of denatured alcohol. So it wasn't like drinking alcohol, but it was just like industrial alcohol or methylated spirits or whatever. Now, his wife and his little baby daughter, who she wasn't a baby, she was 2, but they were going to come with him. Now, his son Arthur, who I think was 7 at the time of this happening, they were actually going to leave him at home with the grandparents because he was still in school and they didn't want to take him out. So he was actually, spoiler alert, the only one of the family that ended up surviving. The immediate family, anyway. So Briggs, like I said, very respected sea captain. And he was very careful about the crew that he chose. This is a very small crew because, like I said, it wasn't a passenger ship. It was a cargo ship. So everybody that he picked, either he had sailed with them before or they came with like sterling recommendations from somebody else that he knew. So it was basically like he had, I think it was just like a total of, it was him and his wife and his kid, and then I think it was like 7 other people. So like I said, it was just like a pretty small crew. It wasn't like, it wasn't the Titanic or anything like that. It was like thousands of people on it. And in his letters, they still have some of his letters that survive that like he wrote to his mom and stuff like that. He told them that they were all first class sailors and he was, looking forward to the journey. He thought it was going to be a good one. Yeah, that wasn't how that worked out. So in October, late October, 1872, Benjamin Briggs shows up at the port in New York City, and he's supervising the loading of the cargo. As I said, it was 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol. Now, his wife and his baby daughter were actually going to come to New York City like a week later. So, because he was waiting and they were, putting the stuff on the ship and everything like that. Now, he wrote a letter to his mother before he left. And very famously, the quote was, "Our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope we shall have a fine passage." Again, that's not what ended up happening. So basically, they went from the pier where they were, and then they all got on the ship, and then they went into the harbor. However, the weather was kind of shitty, and they weren't really sure if they were safe kind of like going out into the open ocean. So they said, well, let's wait a couple of days and see like if the weather gets better. So they actually anchored the ship off of Staten Island, and they still have a letter from Sarah, the wife, to her mother, like talking about their son and everything like that. So they waited there for 2 days, and then they set out into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, for a while, everything appeared to be fine, but there was another ship called the Dei Gratia, which I think is Latin for by the grace of God or something like that. And this was a Canadian brigantine. Now, this ship was taking about the same route, like the same general route. It was also going to Genoa with another cargo, and it was going to sail about 8 days behind the Mary Celeste. They were actually carrying petroleum. Now, the captain of that ship was named David Morehouse, and there's been speculation, like they're pretty sure that he at least knew Benjamin Briggs, the captain of the Mary Celeste. Some of the reports I saw said, they had dinner like before the fateful journey or whatever. Nobody knows if that's the case. That story actually comes from David Morehouse's widow, 50 years later or something like that. So I'm not really sure if that's true or not, but for sure they probably knew each other, at least as casual acquaintances. So he was gonna basically set out on the same route, but he wasn't expecting to run into the Mary Celeste because the Mary Celeste was, one, a faster ship and was 8 days ahead. And even though they were going to the same place, there's probably no way that his ship, the Dei Gratia, could have caught up to the Mary Celeste, had what happened not happened. So the Dei Gratia actually got into this area, which was like halfway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal. They reached there about in the afternoon of December 4th, 1872. Interestingly, it says December 4th, 1872, land time, and then it says Thursday, December 5th, sea time, because apparently sea time used to be different than land time. And I was just sitting there going, how fucking confusing is that? What I read, I don't know if this is true or not, and maybe anybody that's, knows a lot about, like, mariner history or anything like that can tell me, but I read somewhere that before they really had, like, the whole time zone thing locked down, you were considered to be in the same time zone. Like, if you were on a ship, you were considered to be in the same time zone as the time zone of the place that you left. Like, even if you were hundreds and thousands of miles away. Weird. Which I was like, what? How did that work? Like, everybody, now it's like a different day.
Because that's where they started counting time.
Yeah, I guess so.
They wouldn't know.
Be like, what? It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Everybody was on their own time.
I guess.
In other words, time didn't matter.
Evidently not.
Yeah, time didn't matter.
Because, people still got shit done, but it's just kind of like, I thought we were going to meet on the 5th. It is the 5th. You know what I mean? It's like, no, that was yesterday.
We kind of had the same problem in the infantry. We didn't use calendars. We used mission day. You know what I mean? It'd be like day 7, day 8, day 9. It'd be like, that's just how we did it. We didn't really worry about what the outside world date was. We had our own date.
We're just making shit up.
Yeah. We may not know what day it was when you left. Cause,
right.
Sleep deprivation and shit like that,
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the Dei Gratia, captained by Captain Morehouse. I almost said Captain Whorehouse.
Yeah.
Which, see what happens when one person is named Nutting? It just throws off my whole game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Captain Morehouse, they get the ship, and they see another ship off in the distance. Which, like I said, it's not weird. It's, it's the ocean. Every now and then you're going to see another ship. But the captain was, like, looking at it through his little spyglass or whatever, and he's like, something's not right. It's like, that's moving weird. And it was kind of moving toward them, but it was, like, still kind of far away. So, also there was, like, the way the sails were set was unusual. So he thought something was wrong. So he's like, okay, well, we need to go over there and check that out because maybe they're in trouble. So they go over there, and through the spyglass, they couldn't see anybody on the ship, like nobody on deck, which, again, very strange. Nobody hailed them, nobody did anything. And he signaled to the other ship, and obviously nobody replied. So he, the first mate and the second mate, he was like, why don't you go over there in the little dinghy or whatever and, like, see what the hell's going on over there and investigate. So the two of them go over to the other ship, and they see that this ship is the Mary Celeste, because obviously it's written right there on the stern. So the two of them climbed on board the Mary Celeste and found the ship was completely deserted. Now, as I said, the ship wasn't in perfect condition, but it was in decent condition. I mean, it was still obviously seaworthy because it was floating around. And, as we'll find out later, they actually did, like, the other guy got on the ship and took it. You know what I mean? So the sails were set, like only partly set, and they were kind of tattered a little bit, with a couple of them missing. Some of the rigging was damaged, and, with a couple of ropes like hanging over the side. Now, the main hatch cover was fine. It looked completely normal, but a couple of the other hatches were open, and like somebody had looked like they had taken the hatches off and like put them down on the deck or whatever. And also, very famously, the ship's single lifeboat, only had one lifeboat, was missing. Also, the thing that had the ship's compass in it was the glass was broken. There was also about 3.5 feet of water in the hold, which sounds like a lot, but for a ship that size, not really that. It wouldn't have really affected anything. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been like, oh my god, the ship's sinking or anything like that. So it wasn't really a big deal. There was also, and this was maybe a clue as to maybe what happened. There was a sounding rod, but it wasn't the sounding rod that was like normally with the ship. It was just kind of like a janky, like thrown together one. So I guess I don't know where the ship's actual sounding rod was, but they just had something else that they were using as a sounding rod. And it's the thing that they use to like to find out how much water is in the hold, right? So they found that, and that was on the deck also. They also found the ship's log. The final entry was November 25th, which was 9 days before they had found the ship. The Mary Celeste position at that point was like right off Santa Maria Island in the Azores. Now, this was about 400 nautical miles away from where the ship was eventually found. So yeah, the ship floated a long time. Now, the first mate went and investigated, saw that the interiors of the cabin were like kind of wet, like some of the water had come in and stuff like that, but nothing was out of place. Like everybody's stuff was in the closet, like where it should be. Nothing was really knocked over or disturbed or anything like that. Everything looked pretty normal. It's just like a little raggedy, but nothing like terribly weird. Now there were kind of like in Briggs's cabin, he was the captain. There was a couple personal items kind of scattered around, not anything a big deal. There was also like a really nice sword, like in a sheath, like under his bed, like, really, really nice one. Now, most of the ship's papers, though, like the official papers, were missing. And both of the captains, like the captain's personal navigational instruments were also missing, although the logbook was still there, as I mentioned. But there was, like I said, there was nothing to suggest, like there were kind of like stories later that, they went on the ship and there was like, candles burning and there was like dinner laid out on the table. That's not the case. There was no food out. There was nothing like that. But the ship did have enough food in it, like that people could have lived on the ship for like 6 months. So it's not like,
based on everything that was missing, they abandoned ship. That's what you take with you.
Uh-huh.
All the logbooks and important papers, the compass. That's why they broke the glass. They broke the glass to get the compass out?
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Well, the glass cover thing from the thing that held the compass was broken. So yeah, I guess they
took the main compass.
Right.
The good compass. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the captain's like his sextant and
so they could navigate.
Yeah.
And then they got into the missing boat, the missing dinghy, what do they call it?
The life boat.
The life raft. They got them. Yeah. That's what happened. So for some reason they thought they had to abandon ship.
We'll see. That's kind of
that's what the
all
evidence points to that.
That's what the mystery is.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, so the first mate, like he goes and he's like, "Man, this is some weird ass shit. Wonder what happened to all these people." So he goes back to the main ship and says to the captain, what the hell? So, because of the rules of the sea, you find a ship out there that's abandoned and derelict, you can claim it.
Salvage.
It's salvage. So, it was still seaworthy, as I said. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to sail the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, which was 600 nautical miles away. Now you wouldn't get the whole value. I think like you got, I don't remember what the exact percentage was because they didn't end up getting it, like spoiler alert, but you would get like a percentage of the value, like if you brought it back. Nobody else claimed it, blah, blah, blah. So, I think that the more dangerous it was to salvage it, like the more money you got, which seems fair. So basically, the thing about it was that the De Gratia only had 8 dudes on it. So 3 dudes got on the Mary Celeste and, steered that toward Gibraltar. And then the other 5 dudes stayed on the De Gratia and they were also going to Gibraltar. They were like following.
Imagine those 3 dudes are creeped out.
That's what I was saying. It's like, it would be like, I wonder if they had to
big ass ship.
I wonder if they had to like draw straws.
Yeah,
it's like, man, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's like this fucking. Ben said, weren't the finders accused of massacring the crew to steal the ship? Yes, they were. Yeah, we'll get into that in a couple minutes. But yeah, that was one of the theories about what happened. So the 2 vessels, and so like I said, they didn't like the Mary Celeste was in totally fine order. Like they didn't apparently have any trouble like steering at 600 nautical miles like to Gibraltar. They did run into like some bad weather, like some fog and stuff like that. So it took them like a day longer to get there than the De Gratia did. So the De Gratia got there first, and then the Mary Celeste got there the next day. But they didn't have any problems getting there. So they start doing the court hearing for the salvage in Gibraltar in kind of a few days before Christmas of 1872. So this is hilarious to me. So the guy, like the judge guy that was presiding over the salvage hearing was this dude named Frederick Solly Flood. Like that was, and his last name is hyphenated. He was the Attorney General of Gibraltar. Now, one historian, this is a quote that I heard like on a lot of these and I just thought it was too funny, like not to repeat it. One historian said that Frederick Solly Flood was a man, and this is a quote, whose arrogance and pomposity were inversely proportional to his IQ.
Damn.
I'm like, harsh.
Damn.
All right. He sounded like an asshole. He sounded like an asshole. Like,
Dumb motherfucker.
By all accounts. Also, the sort of man who, once he made up his mind about something, couldn't be shifted. Yeah. Which, that's not really
Boy, that sounds like somebody who has fucking third stage syphilis. Syphilis in remission. Yeah. They do that.
Or maybe he's just a dick. I don't know.
Yeah. But, that's what they're describing. Yeah. Men in the sea back then, maybe he might have recovered from syphilis.
Perhaps.
Because once they make up their mind, they can't change their minds.
I don't know if this guy had been at sea or not. Yeah, he was just the Attorney General. He was the guy that was presiding over the salvage. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. He very well may have, and he got siff somewhere. I don't really know. But apparently, he heard the first and second mate of the De Gratia, and they basically went on and told him, in the hearing, like what they had found on board the Mary Celeste. And Solly Flood, but that's also a silly name. He kind of came to the conclusion that some murder was afoot, and again could not really be dissuaded from this belief. And he seemed to think that the crew, either the crew of the De Gratia, the ones that had found the ship, or the crew of the Mary Celeste, had gotten into the alcohol in the cargo and had gone insane and killed everybody.
Oh, well, that's a theory.
It's certainly a theory.
Happens to me every time.
Not a good one, mind you, but it is a theory. Well, and the thing about it was that it wasn't drinking alcohol anyway. And it's like, you could drink that if you really wanted to, but I'm not really sure if you'd be in much shape to be killing people.
Probably make you go blind.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like I don't really think he'd be fucking high as a fucking kite. Yeah.
He's tripping.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's just trying to blame somebody.
Yeah, I kind of feel like So a couple days before Christmas, December 23rd, Solly Flood, he had somebody go on board, like he had a diver and all that other kind of stuff, and they go on board the Mary Celeste and like do this, do some CSI shit on there. Now, what they found, allegedly, and they found out later that this wasn't true, so I'm spoiling it right there. But there was one of the guys that examined the ship. He said, we found these cuts on the side of the bow, which they think was caused by a sharp instrument. And also the captain's sword, because remember I said he had like a sword that was sheathed like under his bed in his cabin, looked like it had blood on it. Now, this, okay. So he's like, the guy also said, like in his report, so he's like, there's blood and there's cuts. It looks like there was violence. And he also said it doesn't look like the ship went through any bad weather. And I'm like, well, what about all the ripped up sails and the ropes and everything? I mean, that looks like some bad weather, maybe. I don't know. But he, like I said, they kind of had one narrative and they wanted to go with it, I guess. So, so basically, also, they had another guy come on, and he said also that he thought these cuts on the bow had been deliberately caused, and that there were stains on one of the ship's railings that also might have been blood, and then there was a deep mark there that said, it was an axe. So they're basically trying to make it seem like I said, that somebody got into the alcohol and like killed everybody with an axe and a sword, and there was blood everywhere and stuff like that. But that's actually not the case. So these reports, though, got sent to, the higher-ups or whatever. And like I said, that was his story. They got into the alcohol. The crew of the Mary Celeste got into the alcohol and killed the Briggs family. And then, nobody knows what happened after that. I don't know. So he thought, too, that maybe the crew of the De Gratia, he thought that another possibility was that the De Gratia had actually either the Captain Morehouse and Captain Briggs had conspired to get, like, salvage rights or insurance money or something like that. So they're like, well, you pretend to, like, find the ship, like, abandoned, and then we'll take it in. And so, like, they had this whole plot going. So they either thought that the two captains, like, conspired to get insurance money, like insurance fraud, or that the De Gratia, like, had planned to waylay the Mary Celeste, kill everybody on board, and then get the salvage rights. So I kind of feel like as soon as they got there with the ship, you know, the dude in Gibraltar was, like, suspicious because he's like, well, you know, everyone's gone and, like, your story doesn't add up and blah, blah, blah. So it's like you guys killed them, like, to get the ship, which I don't know. It just seems like far-fetched. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Yeah, but it just doesn't fit that.
Yeah, it really
There's no
doesn't.
sign of fucking combat, no blood spilled on the ship. There's just, that doesn't sound like a crime spree.
Yeah,
scene.
because like I said,
somebody
they
say, well, maybe they cleaned it up, and by the time they got the ship, you know, because that's the condition of the ship, and as far as the story was given by the guys who had discovered it, and if the guys who discovered it killed people, and they could lie about the condition of the ship when they found it, clean up them. But I don't believe that's what it was. I believe they were telling the truth. They found the ship abandoned in good condition.
Well, and they found out later too that, like, the stuff on the sword and, like, the stuff on the ship wasn't blood anyway.
Yeah.
And they found out that the cuts on there were, like, were just caused by, like, weather and, like, natural stuff. It wasn't like nobody was going around there with an axe, like, doing a Jack Torrance or nothing like that. They figured that out later on. So basically the guy, Winchester, who was, you know, the guy who was, like, the main owner, he was, like, half owner. So he shows up in Gibraltar in January 15th. And he's like, well, you know, we need to deliver the ship because we still have all the shit on the boat that we need to, like, deliver to Genoa, because that's, right? Like, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, Solly Flood, the guy with the the arrogant, pompous dude, he asked for $15,000 from Winchester, like, to release the ship. Now, Winchester is like, fuck you, man, I don't have $15,000. Who the fuck has $15,000? Just, like, here, especially back then. God damn it, that's probably like $1 million back then. So at this point, Winchester, who, like I said, is the half owner of the ship, he figured out that Solly Flood thought that he was kind of, like, casting aspersions on Winchester's name, because he's like, well, you're implying that I hired a crew that would kill the captain and his wife and his baby daughter just in order to, like, either because in a drunken frenzy or in order to, like, collect insurance. So, like, yeah, he got offended, you know what I mean, as you would. Yeah. So him and Flood they didn't get in, like, a fist fight, I don't think, although how awesome would that have been? Like, there's been mustache wax and shit like that flying everywhere. This is the 19th century.
Those dudes couldn't fight anyway.
They're just slapping each other with their gloves and whatnot. Yeah. They're the top like hats. You have offended me deeply, son. Yeah. Pop. Yeah. But yeah, they're just slapping each other.
They're all skinny fat.
But yeah, but they had some verbal exchanges, yeah, for sure. Like, had some little tiffs there. Yeah. And basically, Winchester's like, look, I know Briggs, he wouldn't have done anything, like, to do insurance fraud or anything like that. All of the crew were just unimpeachable character. And he also said that Briggs, he's like, look, he was a really experienced sailor. He'd been doing this ship for a really long time. It's like he wouldn't have abandoned the ship unless something was really wrong. You know what I mean? He wouldn't just, you know, he was used to bad weather. He was used to ships. Yeah. So it had to be something, like, really bad, or he thought that it was really bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it.
Jenny called him a sailor. They'd get mad over that. They were men of the sea. They were seamen.
I don't want to say semen. Yeah, the semen. I already had to say nutting.
Yeah, the nutting and semen.
I already had all these silly names. Yeah. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. The ghost from Ghost of Miss Muir be yelling at you right about now. It's semen, goddammit!
Yeah, that's
a great flick.
That is a great bit. That is a great movie.
Yeah.
Well, I was
It's not a sail, it's a sheet.
I was watching I think what the fuck is the name of that channel? The shit, now I can't remember. It's like those two guys that, god damn it, it just went totally out of my head. But, like, the two funny guys, You guys will probably
the two funny guys.
It's two funny guys, and like they have a paranormal channel, and they have a true crime one too.
I don't know those guys.
And they did you'd know if you saw them because we watched a bunch of them one time. I'll probably remember it like 2 minutes from now. But they did a show about this, and they did one where they were all sitting out by the fire pit, and they were clearly very, very inebriated, which was like hilarious.
So we're not the only ones who get drunk on a paranormal.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. I was watching it. I'm like, oh my god, they're drunker than we are. That's awesome. But because like the dude was out there just like slurring, and they went off on a bunch of digressions too. And semen was one of them. That's why I was reminded because one of them told the other guys like, I want you to just say semen with a completely straight face. And he did it, even though he was like super drunk. They're like, wow, you did it. But yeah, that's why I thought of that. What the fuck is the name of that? BuzzFeed Unsolved. That's what it is. I knew I would think of it. I knew it was 2 words. BuzzFeed Unsolved. But yeah, they did one about the Mary Celeste, which was like very funny, where they were very, very drunk. Well, one of them was drunk anyway. So yeah.
What's funny, people, is that we don't watch the competition mostly. They got people doing other shows, so we don't really consider them the competition. We never even think of them.
Well, I will watch, like, depending on whatever the topic is. Yeah. Like, because I have, channels that I like, that I would just watch anyway. Like, I like BuzzFeed Unsolved. I like Simon Whistler's channels. Yeah. And so, like, if they've done something about it, then I'll probably watch that if I have time, just so I don't cover the same thing or, like, make the same jokes as them or something like that, like, without being
the whole time we've been around, only a couple other channels have ever contacted us. See, what's his name? He hasn't contacted us in a long time. That other paranormal show. Oh shit.
Who? Fade to Black?
No,
it's not Fade to Black. It's Conspiranormal.
Conspiranormal, yeah. Conspiranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was another one.
We've done so many, I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay, I forgot.
But yeah, so as I mentioned, they actually determined that the stuff on the sword was not blood, and they took this information to Flood, and then another guy actually came on the ship and figured out that the marks on the ship were actually just accidental. So they put that in their report as well. So after all of this, Flood, who apparently can change his mind somehow, although he wasn't happy about it, he was very grudging, but he's like, okay, well, I guess I don't get to do like the murder mutiny thing. Fine. So he allowed the Mary Celeste to be released on February 25th, so it could deliver its cargo. So they had a new captain, and they went off and sailed off to Genoa. Now, it turned out that the salvage payment that they got was only £1,700, which was probably a lot of money back then, but it was only a fifth of the value of the ship and the cargo, which was not usually... I think usually you would get half, and I think that he had to split that, like, between 8 people, because there was 8 people on the crew, right? So, not really what he was expecting, I guess, because he had actually like written to his wife and say, "Oh, I found the ship and I'm gonna get all this money from it," but he didn't. Get it. They did kind of rip him off. Well, I think they did that because Flood still had enough power, and he still seemed to think that, despite everybody being like, "Look, it wasn't murder," he really, really wanted it to be murder. So I think he still kind of felt like that the crew of the De Grazia was still under suspicion. So he didn't want to, like, I guess, reward them by giving them all this money. You know what I mean? Because he still thought they were guilty, even though I'm pretty sure they weren't. Like I said, it's not impossible that that's what happened, but I just really doubt it. Like, the evidence just doesn't really support that conclusion.
A way of trying to deny them the money.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe it was that too. It's like they just didn't want to give it to him.
Yeah, they wanted to keep it.
Right. So, all right. So let's talk about the theories that have swirled in the years since for what happened to the 10 people that were on the Mary Celeste. Now, as I mentioned, Flood was a big advocate of the murder scenario. As I said, it does seem that... But the 2 branches of this were either, like I said, that the crew of the Mary Celeste actually went crazy because of the alcohol, And, well, because I forgot to mention, but out of the 1,700, I think it was 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, there were a few of them, I think 8 or 9 of the barrels were empty. However, those particular barrels, I think, like I said, I think it was 8 of them. Those particular barrels were the only ones that were in the cargo hold that were made of red oak instead of white oak. Now, red oak is a lot more porous than white oak, so it's been speculated that maybe the alcohol just kind of leaked out, like, or seeped out. It didn't, like, they weren't broken or anything like that. So, and like I said, 9 barrels, it's like, this is not stuff that you'd be drinking necessarily. So, I don't know why Flood was so head up to be like, you know, yeah, they drank all this denatured alcohol and then went crazy and, like, killed everybody. And because there really wasn't any, there was no sign of violence or struggle or anything like that on the ship. Yeah, a couple things were knocked over, but it wasn't like a fucking, I mean, if you killed, you know, 10 people, well, they wouldn't have been killed 10 people. It would have been like one person killing 9 people or 2 people killing 8 people, whatever. But it's like there would be evidence of that. There would be bloodstains. There would be, like, shit would be knocked over. There would
You get hurt doing it.
Right. It's like, and you know, if that happened, like, where did that guy go? Like, where did the other 2 guys, you know, where did they go? Because they never, I don't buy it either. And then, like I said, that it was either that, like, the crew did it, or that the crew of the De Gratia had planned to ambush the ship just so specifically so they could take it, and they killed the crew and threw them overboard.
It's all unlikely.
Which I don't really buy that either.
Most likely, they abandoned ship because they thought they had to. This must have happened at night. They couldn't check on certain conditions of something. They thought something was wrong. It probably had to do with that cargo. Maybe they thought the cargo was going to catch on fire for some reason.
Well, I'm going to get into all that
or
stuff in a
maybe
minute.
maybe they smelled something, thought it was some kind of gas leak. They thought it was going to blow up. For some reason, they thought they had to get off in a hurry.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that.
Yeah.
That's one of the theories I'm going to get into in a minute. I'm still talking about the murder ones, though. Trey says, see, all the books I had claimed dinner was laid out on the tables. Yeah, and I kind of feel like that's become like urban legend at this point, but that's not the case. That's not true. They said there was actually no food being prepared. There's a bunch of food on the ship, like food stores, but there was nothing laid out. Although, I did read, I think there was another ship, like another ghost ship, that was maybe off the coast of Australia or something like that, that had that, like where they found the ship abandoned and there was like actually a meal laid out, but I can't remember all the details of that. But that didn't happen on the Mary Celeste, though. There was no dinner laid out, so it wasn't like super sudden, but it did seem like something happened and they were like, yeah, we need to get the fuck off here, like, immediately.
They took all the emergency shit you're supposed to take when you abandon a ship.
Yeah, but like I said, it seems unlikely that the crew of the De Gratia had conspired to, you know, kill the crew of the Mary Celeste and blah, 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 because like I said, they didn't even leave port until 8 days after the Mary Celeste, and if the Mary Celeste hadn't been abandoned, they wouldn't have caught up to them because they were much slower, like their ship was much slower. So how did they figure that was going to work? It just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like that's the plan. And like I said, they, you know, why would they do that? It just seemed like a stupid thing to do. And they ended up not getting that much money anyways. So, yeah. So, it's also been speculated that perhaps the crew was set upon by pirates. Again, this is possible, but usually pirates don't just board a ship, kill everybody, throw them overboard, and then just leave the shit.
Yeah, they steal.
I mean, they want the ship and the stuff. That's kind of the point of piracy.
Yeah. And if they felt they couldn't get rid of the ship, they would at least steal the cargo. They'd loaded the cargo out of that ship into their ship. They'd taken everything. They'd robbed the place fucking blind.
Yeah, because there was still like some valuable shit left on there that like belonged to some of the crew, like, and you know, the captain.
Yeah,
and
it was
stuff.
pirates.
So yeah, I'm not thinking, unless the only thing that I can think of is, yeah, maybe pirates got on board, you know, and either were like, oh, the cargo is worthless, which it's not. I mean, you can pretty much offload anything, but they got on the ship and then killed everybody, and then something else happened and they're like, oh shit, we got to get off here. But like I said, that just goes back to so it's like, I'm not really buying the pirate thing either, because they didn't take anything, and nothing looked like it had been rifled through or nothing.
That's what would have happened.
Right.
It fucking knocked everything over, just like in a house robbery. Just taking a whole dresser drawers and just dumping the shit out. You know,
just looking for valuable shit.
Yeah, big piles of fucking clothes and shit in the center of the room where they're just throwing all there and trying to sort through it as they're going. The place would have been ransacked, literally. Would have been ransacked.
Yeah. And like I said, they probably would have taken the whole ship too, because the ship was in good shape.
And at sea, you got time. So they would have been on there, and they probably would have spent a night there.
Yeah, it's not like somebody's going to drive by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're in the middle of the fucking ocean.
Yeah.
Also, there have been some, and this is really kind of crazy, some people have also speculated that Captain Briggs himself flipped out, like went into some kind of weird religious mania and decided to kill everybody. But again, no signs of violence on the ship. No blood, no nothing like that. And everybody that knew him was like, yeah, that's really not something he would do.
It's more unlikely shit.
Yeah, that's
what this
that's
was
very
is going to be
unlikely.
very likely. Is what it is. It's been something that, had you been there, it made total sense.
Yeah.
Got to figure out what that is.
So okay. So now let's kind of talk about, like I said, a more plausible scenario. Now, because the lifeboat was missing, and because really the only other things missing from the ship were shit that you would take with you in an emergency situation, like your navigational tools and stuff like that.
Records.
And like the records of the ship and everything. Most people, that don't think it was Bigfoot or whatever, speculate that probably something happened on the ship that made them think that the ship was going to sink or possibly explode, or something else was wrong with the ship. And it had, like I said, it had to be something kind of dire, because most people that knew Captain Briggs were like, he was very experienced. He wouldn't have just like been a nervous Nelly and like jumped off the ship at the slightest provocation. It would have had to have been something bad, or he thought that it was going to be something bad.
It was something that they thought that they had to do quickly, like they were running out of time.
Right.
Because they left quickly by what?
So, yeah, and so some people have speculated, this is kind of one of the more plausible scenarios to me, is that perhaps the fumes from the alcohol that had leaked out of those empty barrels, I don't know how long it took like to leak over, but it was supposedly that would cause like a really a bad smell.
There you go.
And so maybe they thought that the ship was going to blow up.
Yeah.
And so they thought, I don't think, though, that they necessarily would have gotten to the lifeboat being like, we're just going to get the fuck out of here. Some people speculated that they got in the lifeboat and, like, kept it attached to the boat so that they were like, we're going to let the ship air out, and then we'll get back on it, like, when the fumes, or something like that. You know what I mean? So that was another theory
something like that.
But then it happened that, like, the lifeboat somehow became detached from the main ship.
They didn't tie it right, or fucking rope broke, something like that.
Or something like that, and then, like, they drifted off into the ocean and couldn't get back to the ship.
And this could have happened at night, so they couldn't really see down in the hold, maybe. Maybe it happened at night, and they thought somebody was down there with a gas lantern. And like, oh, shit, those fumes with that gas lamp, it's going to blow. We got to get out of here. It's going to be something like that.
And some have speculated, too, that there might have actually been an explosion. Now, I will note that there wasn't any obvious sign of an explosion, like down in the hold. However, I think in the 2000s, they actually did an experiment where they showed that a particular kind of explosion, like, actually could just have kind of a flash explosion that it wouldn't really leave any singeing or anything. Now, I will note that the particular things that you need for that to happen, or the conditions, are kind of rare, so it's not really certain if that's what happened or not. But that might have been something that caused some panic. Maybe there was like an explosion and they were just like, oh shit, the ship's blowing up.
It would have been a very low pressure explosion, not like a fucking high explosive where it shattered wood. Here's a good example. I talked about this on another show. We were partying one time in Mississippi, and we were spiking our own punch bowl with fucking Everclear. And Everclear in those days came in... Wait, hold on, no, I got it backwards. We took the Everclear, and in those days we had Hawaiian Punch, and Hawaiian Punch came in a can, a big can. It was like a 2-liter can, and you could use a bottle opener basically, and put 2 triangular holes in it and pour the Hawaiian Punch out. In the bottom of the Hawaiian Punch can, there was some Hawaiian Punch, and I poured some Everclear into it and stirred it around and was drinking it from the triangle. And fucking, when I was putting my mouth up to it, I said, "Oh man, smell that!" And dude's Joey's next to me. I said, "Smell that, man." He goes, "Damn!" You know, he smells just like alcohol coming out. And he grabbed his cigarette lighter and fucking touched it to the top of that triangular hole, and it fucking lit up, and it thrusted like a rocket. I felt the whole can swell in my hand and get hot and go and thrust like 2 or 3 seconds, like a rocket engine. And then it burned out, and it just flashed out like it had never happened. Didn't damage anything.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happened in that cargo hold.
Maybe.
A bunch of gas built up, and somebody went over there with it was nighttime, and they went over there with a gas lantern and set it off. And maybe it blew a bunch of fire out through a hatch, a cargo hatch, and they saw that, and it scared the shit out of them, and they abandoned ship.
I mean, now the main hatch was still closed.
Okay.
And it was secured.
There was another hatch open?
But there were 2 other hatches that were open. I'm not sure, like, where they were located on the ship, though.
Maybe the gas fumes just fucking touched off a blue flame, shot out of there, and it scared the shit out of them. And they thought the place was going to blow up, even though the gas had burned off.
Here's the thing, though, and some researchers have pointed out, they're like, the whole lifeboat staying tethered to the main ship theory. They're like, if they legit thought that the ship was going to blow up or sink, you wouldn't think that they would want to remain tethered to it. I believe...
Maybe they were waiting to see.
I believe that the rope that, that had the lifeboat that was attaching was cut and not torn.
Hmm.
So...
Maybe they thought it was blowing up again or something.
Right. So, like I said, whatever it was must have been bad because everything happened, like, really quickly, it seemed like. Now... So, like I said, it must have been something, like, really alarming to get, like, a seasoned captain and a seasoned crew to kind of panic, essentially. You know what I mean? Or at least, like, felt like they need to get off the ship. So, there was also... Remember how I said that kind of, like, ersatz sounding rod was found on the deck?
Yeah.
They thought maybe what happened was that the sounding rod wasn't working right, and it gave the captain a false reading. Because, like I said, that's supposed to tell you how much water is in the hold. There was only 3.5 feet in there. There was too much cargo in the hold, as far as I'm aware. So he wouldn't have been able to, like, visually see how much water was in there. So if he took a sounding that was incorrect... Maybe he thought the ship was taking on more water than it actually was, and he thought it was sinking.
Maybe, yeah.
So they could have been that as well. That would explain, like, why the sounding rod was there, why it was just dropped on the deck like that, because they're like, holy shit, there's all this, even though there wasn't. Like I said, it was only 3.5 feet, which is no big deal.
Maybe they thought it was taking on water.
And also, one of the pumps was also disassembled, like they had been trying to fix it, which they thought was interesting. Now, they said... there was a thing, too, like, prior to...
But they don't know when the disassembly took place?
No. But, like, yeah, all the pieces were still there. Okay. Now, they said prior to Briggs captaining the ship, because this was his first voyage, like, on this ship, you know what I mean? His first time captaining it. Prior to that, I believe it had been carrying, like, a cargo of coal or something like that, and they were speculating that maybe coal dust, like, got in the pumps or something like that, and they were, like, taking it apart because it was, like, clogged. You know, that's another possibility. There's also the possibility that there was some kind of, like, weather phenomenon that, you know, like a water spout, for example, like, because there was, like, some water, like, in the ship, or, like, a sea quake, you know, that might have, like, or like, a rogue wave, something like that, you know, but I kind of feel like it was something...
It's more likely something had to do with that cargo.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like if it was something like... a rogue wave. I don't think it was that, because
There's been more evidence of that.
It seemed like they had time at least to like gather up a couple things and all get in the lifeboat and do the thing. So it must have been something that happened that they could see coming. Like I said, so it could have been a water spout. They're like, oh shit, that's gonna. But I kind of feel like if you're a seasoned, seaman, okay, I said it. If you've seen water spouts before,
they
and
didn't know what that was. I think that this is maybe a couple things happening at once under conditions that made them think that a disaster was impending.
Right. It must have been that. It must have been that.
They got convinced that the fucking ship was either taking water or getting ready to blow up. And they're like, we got to get off the ship. And they get off the ship. Maybe they're in that lifeboat, and they're still tethered to it. And maybe they're just waiting to see if the ship goes down or if it blows up. And while they were waiting, maybe somebody just let go or untied it for some reason.
Yeah.
In a panic. And the ship never did go down. And they drifted apart.
Right.
They couldn't catch up to the ship.
And they couldn't, yeah.
And that was it. Maybe they didn't have any oars with them, so there was no way to row. There's no way to knowing. Or the ship, there was wind out that night and the fucking sails were still up and the fucking ship accelerated away. So they couldn't get back to it. They probably rode their fucking asses off, tried to catch it, and never could get to it. It was something like that. It was something real. It was a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Now, I was reading, like I said, at the Smithsonian Magazine, they did a thing, like a good article about it. They kind of looked into weather conditions at the time, like the route and everything like that. They thought that maybe the captain's chronometer was faulty and that he was off course without being aware of it. And they thought that when the bad thing happened, he actually... they were either within sight of an island or he thought that an island was close by. So he thought, oh, well, this ship's going to go down, so everybody get in here. This land is just like right over there, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Somebody's asking about a riptide. Riptides usually happen up near the coast, like near where the beaches are.
Yeah, not so much in the middle
in
of
sea.
the ocean.
What it was is they got off the ship, and they were tethered to it, and somehow they became untethered, and they couldn't catch back up to the ship. Wind was out, and the sails were up, and it accelerated away. They couldn't row back up to it to catch up with it. And the question is why'd they abandon ship? They thought it was going to sink. They thought it was either taking water or they thought it was going to blow up. Or they smelled a bunch of fucking alcohol and smelled gases. Maybe they thought they'd suffocate. So maybe they thought, maybe if we distance ourselves from the ship and hold onto it to a line, we'll let it all air out.
And then, yeah,
and be
and
safe,
then we'll come
go back. But somehow they lost the line.
They got separated.
They couldn't catch up. It was something like that.
Yeah, because it looks like they definitely left deliberately and in something of a hurry. So it must have been some kind of, like I said, alarming scenario that they're like,
smell.
We need to get off this ship before
it was
something
a couple
bad
things.
happened.
It was a couple things that happened that were out of their control. Maybe they smelled these gases and they thought it was going to kill them, so they got to get off the ship. And they said, well, we'll just hold on to it with a line. When the fucking ship airs out, we'll get back in. But then they got separated and they couldn't catch up to the ship. And then they didn't make it at sea. They had all their navigational stuff, but they were out in the middle of nowhere. They never made it back. They were never found.
Yeah, they never found.
They
never found any of them.
Yeah, which meant that they died of thirst. It means that they were dead within about a week.
Which is scary. What if they were out there floating in that fucking lifeboat? They probably
I'm sure they were. They were probably in a lifeboat for about a week.
That's horrifying. And it's like I said, you have to think too. There's a baby. She was 2 years old.
Yeah, the baby wouldn't have made it. Baby wouldn't have made it 3 or 4 days, bro.
Yeah, 2 years old, little girl.
Yeah.
That was the captain's daughter.
They dehydrate quick.
But yeah, so there had been some cases, like I said, where ships that had cargo of alcohol had exploded before. And it should be noted too that I believe in the ship's log, which has since been lost, they do know what the last few days of it said because good old Solly Flood, the pompous ass, he actually copied down a lot of the last stuff, for the trial or the hearing or whatever. So that's kind of the only surviving record of it. And apparently there had been weird noises like coming from the hold, like rumblings and stuff like that. So maybe they were kind of over the few days were worried that it was going to blow up. Also talked about like some real rough weather. So it could have been a combination of those two things, I feel like. So there was evidence of not only that they were worried about some kind of weird noise in the hold, but also like the weather had been bad.
They never found the logs that was all lost on the damn lifeboat. It probably was in the logs.
No, they found the logs.
They found the log?
Because they found them they were still on the ship.
Okay, it was just the captain's papers that were...
Yeah, he took like the papers.
Did the logs mention anything?
That's what I just said.
It didn't.
No, okay. I just said that the log mentioned that there had been like rumbling noises coming from the hold. And that,
how long did that go on for?
I don't know, like a few days, and then also that the weather had been really, really bad. Like
something
that they
was
had
rolling around
like
down
rough
there.
Weather.
Probably some of those alcohol barrels became dislodged from the rough weather and were rolling around.
Maybe, and like I said, 3 of them or 8 or 9 of them were empty, so the stuff had like seeped out,
but they hadn't been opened.
No, but like I said, they were made of a different kind of wood than the other barrels, which was more porous, so it probably just seeped out. The fact that they were empty, I think, was one of the things that made Flood think that they had drank this stuff and like went crazy, but that wasn't the case. It probably just seeped out. Because it was a different kind of wood.
And it went down into the bilge water?
Yeah, because there was some water down there.
Did it smell like alcohol, I wonder?
Don't know. But that,
what would
like
happen?
I said,
would it still evaporate and go into the hold?
Yeah, I don't know.
And would you smell all of it?
I mean...
I think they smelled something. They thought it was going to... They heard something rumbling. They must have been kind of spooked that something was going wrong in the cargo hold.
Yeah.
But you'd think they'd go down in there and check. Oh, it's weird. Maybe it wasn't that at all. Something else happened. They thought the ship was on fire, or they thought it was going to blow up. I think they thought it was going to blow up. It's only explanation.
Yeah, that's the only thing that would like cause sufficient alarm, and it'd be like, holy shit, we need to get off here right now.
Yeah, it was something that they thought they had to get off right then. It's something that they couldn't fix. The only thing I can think of is they thought it was going to blow up.
Yeah. But it didn't.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of sad about it. But yeah. So, as I said, they actually did do an experiment in 2006, but, kind of exploring the explosion theory to see if there could have been an actual explosion on the ship without there being any evidence of it. And, they did under certain conditions that absolutely can happen. You can have an explosion without any particular fire damage or scorching or anything like that. So, it's possible they either thought it was going to explode or it did explode.
Especially the alcohol fumes, I've seen it.
Right.
I was holding a damn alcohol rocket for a few seconds, and when it was over, it's like it never happened. Now, it's very low pressure. Yeah. And it's not that hot.
Ben said they might have been doing an evacuation drill and all gotten into the longboat and then fallen into the sea.
1800s wasn't much for training and fucking drills and shit. I don't think
they just
kind of let shit go.
Just suck it up. Yeah. You'll figure it out.
The 20th century thinking.
Yeah, it's like I feel like nowadays it's like you practice in case something goes wrong. But back then,
they didn't think that way.
You just kind of wing it.
They didn't have any concept of safety. They didn't even put a railing around fucking huge gears. And where you had children
just don't fall in.
working in factories.
Right.
We could put a guard over this to keep these kids from falling into that big ass gear, but they're just kids. That's okay.
There's lots of other ones.
Yeah, we got more.
We've got more of them. It's sad but true. People were just
Victorians weren't safety minded, weren't safety conscious. They just weren't.
Yeah.
They didn't think that way.
Yeah, they didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
Carly said most of the sailors could not swim. I've heard that, actually. You'd think that would be the first thing you'd want to learn how to do if you're going to spend your life on the ocean.
But I think they're kind of forced into that life on short notice, I think, a lot of times. Poverty made them become sailors. A lot of guys got shanghaied into it and shit.
True. Hugo said a serial killer on board, maybe.
Yeah.
I doubt it. I think there would be more evidence of that. I think it was some kind of...
No, it was an
natural disaster. It was like some kind of accident on the ship where they felt like they had to get off. Now, interestingly, like I said, A lot of details that people remember, because like Trey was saying that was in those weird like Unsolved Mysteries books or whatever, a lot of details got added later on. For example, in 1883, years after the incident, the LA Times like reprinted the story but added some creepier sounding details, like all the sails were set, not true. The tiller was lashed fast, not a rope was out of place, also not true. The ropes were kind of hanging all over the place and sort of raggedy. The fire was burning in the galley, the dinner was standing untasted and scarcely cold, the log written up to the hour of her discovery. None of this stuff was true. There was no dinner on the table, like I said, there was no fire burning in the thing, and the log was only recent up to 9 days prior to the ship being found. I believe the last entry was at 5 a.m., 9 days prior to.
Jeffy Art found the guy that I was talking about who was mummified.
Manfred Fritz Bajorat.
Yeah. I talked
mummified in his boat in 2016. I think it was missing for 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yeah. I remember kind of hearing about that,
yeah,
but yeah, that's pretty
I saw
creepy.
photographs.
Yeah, well, that's pretty creepy.
He's kind of slightly green.
I'm going to have to, well...
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, if you've been floating around in the ocean dead for 3 years, you're not going to look your best either. So,
yeah, he had mold growing on him, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What did he have, like barnacles on him? And
no, just mold.
He's covered with barnacles.
Yeah, dried up mold on him.
Yikes.
His clothes look normal.
Imagine being famous for that, for being the mummified in the boat guy.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess he doesn't know any different. But yeah, so a lot of the stuff was, the stuff about the dinner and the ship being like completely pristine and intact. Not true, but a lot of that was added only like probably 8, 9, 10 years after the fact, like when everybody started like embellishing the story, as it does, because it's like a better story like that. It's creepier. And as I mentioned, in 1884, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who I don't think he was like super, super famous at this time. He was still fairly young, but he wrote a short story. He was a ship surgeon at the time, and it was called J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. And it was essentially a retelling. Well, the ship was called the Mary Celeste, like with an IE instead of a Y. And it was purported to be, it was told in the first person, and it was like someone that was on the ship, like telling what had happened. Now, in the short story, which took place in 1873, the ship was actually going from Boston to Lisbon, which is actually not the case. It was actually, in real life, was going from New York City to Genoa. And in the story, it had passengers on it. And it turned out that what happened to the crew in the short story was that a guy who I think was an escaped slave named Septimus hated white people and so slaughtered all of them. I was like, okay.
Yeah, how do you get out there to the ocean?
I don't really know. I guess he worked on the ship or something like that. So he was like, he murdered like the captain or something. He's going to he would like, was commandeering the ship and he was going to take it to Africa or something like that.
Yeah. That was also back to Africa movement.
Yeah, I guess. But then there was like a magical charm involved too. So, you know what I mean. But it was crazy. But that's the thing. I kind of feel like even though he just wrote the story like as a lark and it was just very loosely based on the Mary Celeste thing, some of the details from that got conflated with the real story as well. Also, because this was a very popular story, in 1913, the Strand magazine also published another account which was purportedly true by somebody who survived it. Even though the dude's name, and he was supposedly a steward on there, they're like, we didn't have a steward and we didn't have anybody by that name on the ship, but okay. So people were just making shit up like back then just to get their 5 minutes of fame, I guess. And his tale, like what happened to everybody, was that all of the crew were they were having a swimming contest and they had this platform set up and it collapsed and everybody fell in the ocean and drowned or got eaten by sharks except for him. So he was around to like tell the tale. So I was like, okay. But they changed a lot of details for that as well. So there were a couple of other ones later on, like throughout the early 20th century, adding all kinds of details. So that's where a lot of the kind of creepier aspect of the story came from. They came from like fictionalized stories and shit like that. Now, interestingly, even though the crew disappeared and have never been seen again, the ship itself still they still used it like for a while afterwards, which, like I said, you'd think it would be kind of creepy, like being on that shit. But so it
they
drops.
didn't die on the ship.
Well,
they'd be there.
Yeah, that's true.
They didn't die on the ship.
Yeah, I guess it would be
ship.
like creepier if you, because to be honest, it's pretty creepy like getting on there and like just finding nobody.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it'd probably be worse to get on there and like find a bunch of like dead bodies.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? They just never found the people.
They left.
Yeah.
And got separated.
So after the Mary Celeste like dropped off the alcohol in Genoa, and it sailed back to New York. And because of all of the hearings and all of the stuff, the ship was actually quite famous now. So nobody really wanted it like anymore because of all of this, creepy shit that was associated with it. So it got sold in 1874 at a very large loss because, like I said, no one really wanted it.
Bad luck.
Yeah, because it's like bad luck. Because, like I said, this is like the third captain now, like to die. I think. So a bunch of like New York business guys like owned it, and then they kind of used it as a trade ship, like West Indies, Indian Ocean, stuff like that. Pretty much operating at a loss, like for the entire time.
They didn't make any money on it.
They didn't make any money on it because, like I said, it was people saw it as kind of like cursed or whatever. Actually, they had another captain, a guy named Edgar Tuthill, in 1879, and he actually died also. Like, he got off the ship because he was like not feeling too good, and he died too. Dang. So yeah, a lot of people were kind of like, cursed, it's cursed, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was the third captain that died prematurely. So at that point, they sold the ship to another consortium of dudes. A bunch of dudes from Boston. And they had a new captain installed, whose name was Thomas Fleming. Not a weird name there. And he stayed on there until 1884, and then he got replaced with another dude named Gilman Parker, no relation to Nutting Parker, I'm imagining. And then it just kind of like changed hands a bunch of times, with probably nothing weird happening. Like I said, just operating as a loss most of the time. Now, in 1884, this Parker dude, I guess because the ship wasn't making any money, and I guess it was kind of, notorious and everything like that, he decided, I'm going to pull some insurance fraud. So he put a bunch of worthless shit onto the ship, and then wrote in the manifest, like on the ship, that it was a bunch of valuable shit. And then he went to Port-au-Prince in Haiti, and he basically ran it into a coral reef on purpose.
Damn.
So which ripped out the whole entire bottom of the ship. So then him and the crew rowed themselves ashore. Oh my God, we're alive. That was terrible. And then he ended up selling the cargo to the American consul for $500, and then he filed an insurance claim. However, an investigation ensued, at which point they discovered that all of the cargo was useless and that he had run the ship aground on purpose. Mm-hmm. So the dude got arrested for what they called willfully casting away the ship. This crime actually had a name called barratry, and the punishment for barratry at that time was death.
Damn.
So yeah, they were like,
they executed?
No.
Okay.
They were, well, yeah, but that was the punishment usually, because they didn't fuck around, I guess.
Yeah.
You do this, you pull this shit with the ship, and he didn't even kill anybody. Jesus Christ. But yeah, so basically, the jury couldn't agree on a verdict, and basically they're like, there was another charge, he was for conspiracy or something like that, and then the judge basically was like, they negotiated some shit. They're like, well, we won't kill you as long as you pay back all of the money that you stole, essentially.
Damn. Wonder if he was able to do that.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I think he died only a couple years later.
Yeah, I got away with it.
He didn't though, because he died penniless.
Yeah.
like only a few months after after he was released. And actually, like one of the other guys that was in on it too, like went crazy and went in an asylum, and then the other one like killed himself. So you know what I mean? It didn't end well for anybody. Which again, that only like fed into the Mary Celeste like curse thing shit. Because holy shit. Now, interestingly, so after that, the ship was pretty much done for, and they just kind of wrecked it or whatever.
They scrapped it.
Yeah. Now, in August...
It was a wooden ship or a steel ship? You know?
Wooden.
Wooden? Okay.
Yeah, it was wooden. In August of 2001, Clive Cussler, who you may know as a hugely famous author, and he's also a marine archaeologist, he wanted to do an expedition to see if he could find the remains of the Mary Celeste. And they found, like, some metal shit and, like, some pieces of timber and stuff like that, which kind of was where the Mary Celeste supposedly sunk, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, it looks like the wood that, like, when they did all the tests on it, it said it looks like the wood that they would have used, like, when the Mary Celeste was refitted, like, in 1872. So they're like, oh, we found it. But then they did dendrological tests, which, you know, the tree ring shit. And they found out that the wood on this ship came from trees which had not been cut down until after the Mary Celeste would have been built. So they're like, okay, so that wasn't that. So as far as I know, they haven't really found the remains of it. They thought they did, but they didn't. So as I mentioned, this has been a very famous story over the years. There's been plays and movies and all kind of like stuff. There was a Hammer movie in 1935 called The Mystery of the Mary Celeste. In the U.S., it's called Phantom Ship, actually. 1935.
I didn't know Hammer went that far back.
Bela Lugosi was in it.
Oh, man. Maybe we should see it.
I kind of felt like that, too. I was like, yeah, we totally should see that. And then there was also another short movie in 1938 called The Ship That Died, that's more like a documentary type thing, which kind of has a bunch of different theories presented. Like, it has, like, some supernatural ones, like, oh, it was a giant... Well, a giant squid isn't supernatural, but you know what I mean? Like a sea monster or, like, ghosts.
There's a kraken.
Or, yeah, a kraken or something like that. Because that's one that I didn't mention, but that's one that a lot of... I'm like, you'd think that there would be more...
You think the kraken would fuck that shit up? You're talking about...
Yeah, the ship would be all fucked up. Or what, like, the kraken, his little tentacles just come up, and he's like, I'm just gonna take all the crew members and...
One by one.
And the chronometer and the sextant and the lifeboat, and that's it.
The kraken. The kraken's coming! Kraken.
That's kind of it.
Yeah.
That's fucking funny. But yeah.
Pookie.
Are you back there, Pookie?
Yeah, Pookie's sitting right there.
Oh. So as I mentioned, Smithsonian Channel did like a documentary about it, and I read like the article that came out in conjunction with it, where they pretty much thought that what happened was that there was some kind of pump congestion or something like that because of the coal. Remember, because I said that it had transported coal prior, and the pump was disassembled on the deck. And so they didn't, and also the sounding rod there, and they're like, they maybe thought the ship was sinking because they couldn't tell how much water was in the hold, and maybe that caused them to like panic and all get off the ship. But most people that, you know, that subscribe to realistic theories, obviously something went wrong on the ship that was dire enough for a seasoned sea captain to be like, we need to get off this boat. Like, he thought that it would be safer either getting in the lifeboat and, like, towing behind, like, for a little while, or sailing for land, which was supposedly nearby. So I don't really buy the murder thing. I don't buy the pirate thing. There's just, like, not evidence of it. Like, not impossible, but I kind of feel like it just looks like they left in a hurry, but not... There wasn't any violence. There wasn't anything like that. So it was just something bad happened. They thought... this shit's going down, let's get the fuck off here, and then they just didn't make it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably all this, but it's still creepy. It's still a creepy story, and nobody knows, and probably no one will ever know exactly what happened. They never found their bodies, nothing like that.
It was a series of events that led them to incorrect fucking conclusions in each event, and it led them down a path that they didn't return from. They thought they were doing the right thing, but they weren't. But they didn't know that at the time. I mean, if they had just stayed on the ship, they would have been fine. Right, yeah.
But it must have been something really bad that it's like, we can't stay on the ship.
We don't know the exact conditions that they abandoned ship under. There might have been a storm happening at the time. It may have been at night storm, and they may not have been able to check the actual condition of the ship. And somebody
I
said
kind of feel
something,
because
and
they did say that the weather had been rough, like for the last few days.
And it could have been that somebody yelled something from across the ship, and it was misinterpreted what the person said. And he said abandoned ship, we gotta go, that kind of shit.
Yeah, it might have just been so everybody just like grab your shit.
And then the dude who did not say abandoned ship, that's what they thought that he said, is seeing everybody abandon his ship. He goes, oh shit, abandoned ship. Okay, yeah.
We're doing this now. All right.
Yeah. And they don't know why. It could have been something just that simple.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I forgot to mention, like when I was talking about the murder theories, that one of the murder theories was that two of the guys on the crew of the Mary Celeste were these two German brothers. And for a while, like, some people suspected they had killed all the crew because their shit was not on the ship. Like their belongings. So they thought, oh, well, they killed everybody and then took their shit and skedaddled. And then they just, like, went in, like, the witness protection program somewhere or something like that. But then it came out later on that their shit wasn't on the boat because the ship that they had been on prior, they'd been in a shipwreck, so they actually didn't have any shit. You know what I mean?
Looking back at some of the fucking accidents and shit that happened in our units, fucking when we were in the Army and back in the infantry, a lot of the shit, most of it had to do with the conditions. People hadn't been sleeping for days on end. It happened at night. So you can't really see. It's cold as fuck, so people are kind of stupid. Cold will make you real slow and stupid, and make you not want to do things like, I don't want to pick that up. I'm too cold. That kind of shit. It was the conditions, I think, that contributed to this. Some kind of confusion happened, and they thought they had to get off the ship, and they weren't really of sound mind. Maybe it was a real bad storm. A lot of them were sick, or they hadn't been able to sleep, and it was nighttime, and they were exhausted, and they were just sick of the shit. And
some people have speculated too that maybe the alcohol fumes made them kind of loopy.
Maybe they smelled alcohol fumes and they thought, oh man,
that might have contributed too.
Maybe they thought all the fucking, maybe all the alcohol canisters had fucking broken loose, and they were all broken, and all that fluid was just loose in the cargo hold, and they're like, oh man, that shit's gonna catch on fire. Let's get the fuck out of here. It was something like that, and they weren't really of totally sound mind. Maybe they woke up out of maybe they all woke up out of a deep sleep or something, and didn't have much notice, and they might have been half asleep when they're making these decisions. There's no way of knowing. It was something having to do with the conditions.
Yeah, I mean, they're out in the middle of the fucking ocean. Yeah. All kind of terrible things can happen out there.
I have a feeling it happened at night.
Well, because like I said,
electricity.
The last log entry was at 5 a.m. Yeah. But there didn't appear to be anything wrong then. But it does seem like whatever happened, happened not too long after that, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's probably happened at night. It's before electricity, so that means the ship isn't real well lit. Something happens and they can't really see to verify if the damage really happened. Like, are we taking water? Yeah, we might be taking water, but I can't see. They didn't have electric flashlights back then.
Yeah, everything was a pain in the ass back then. You couldn't see shit.
Yeah, they couldn't really see, and they're probably like,
could just take your cell phone out of your pocket.
I think he's taking water. He's looking down in the hold, and he's like, I ain't going down there. It's dark. And it was something like that. And then he said, well, we'll get out of here and we'll just trail behind the ship and just hold the line. If the ship goes down, let go. It's that kind of shit.
Either that or they thought that there was land nearby, near enough.
I don't know. I don't think that. I think they got out. They wouldn't have counted on that.
Well, what I read that where they were whenever this shit happened, they probably would have been able to see Santa Maria Island.
Huh.
Like, they weren't that far away from it.
Maybe they did see it.
So maybe they saw it. So maybe they weren't even going to stay attached to the ship. Maybe they said, we're going to go to Santa Maria Island.
And then they didn't make it.
And then they didn't make it.
For some reason.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So that could be a possibility also. I'm pretty sure, I read that somewhere, that they would have been able to see it probably.
Could have been they're trailing behind it, and they're holding on to the rope. And they probably have instructions, well, if the ship starts going down, just let go of the rope. We don't want to go down with it. And then a gust of wind came and pulled on that ship hard, and it accelerated away, and they were too weak. They couldn't hold it, and it fucking pulled the rope out of their hand. And that was it. And they couldn't catch up with the ship.
It's just sad. It's sad. I mean, they didn't know, but it's like, had they stayed on the ship, they probably would have been fine. Yeah. You know, like the shit would have passed, and they'd be like, oh, everything's fine, and they just would have got to Genoa and lived out the rest of their lives.
Tammy said maybe it was aliens. Yeah.
Well, yeah, some people have said alien abduction.
Aliens. No. Mistake. Misadventure.
Misadventure. That's one way I'm putting it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a sad story. It's just really sad.
Yeah, and they were probably out there for about a week dying of thirst with a
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, oh man, it's like if they, I mean, unless they drowned right away, it's like they were probably just out there floating around in the fucking Atlantic.
They were in that fucking thing floating around in the direct sunlight.
Which is,
with limited water.
Hey, I've seen that shit on I Shouldn't Be Alive.
And those bodies were in that fucking boat for fucking months, exposed to the sun and the rain, birds, shit.
Yeah, like eating their eyeballs out and shit.
Yeah. So it was just, in the end...
The ocean, man.
It was just a fucking...
It's no fun.
It was just a lifeboat with fucking skeletons in rags.
Imagine coming across that when you're in the middle of the Atlantic. Creepy.
Usually they die, they die one by one. And a lot of times they throw them out the boat. Throw the baby out and shit. So maybe there would be nobody in there except one person. The last one.
And he's in there going crazy.
You don't want to be in there with a stinky ass dead body in the direct sunlight. So they throw them out usually.
Well, yeah, because then the sharks will eat them. Well, you don't want to keep. You don't want to keep sharks around the fucking.
Well, you don't want to be in that fucking boat with a stinking dead body. They throw it out.
Well, yeah, that's true. Didn't we see that I Shouldn't Be Alive episode where somebody died in the ship and then they left him in there?
Yeah.
Like for a few days, and they were like, there's fucking corpse juice in the bottom of the fucking boat, and I was like, gross, man.
They get desperate, they fucking dying of thirst, and they reach down and they start drinking salt water, and that fucking makes it even worse, and they go crazy.
I mean, I get it, like, if you're desperate enough, you're just like, just fuck it. Even though you're not supposed to drink salt water.
Usually by the time they drink salt water, they're already dying.
That's what I'm saying.
So it doesn't really matter. And they're already half crazy, and then they drink the salt water, and they feel better for a few seconds, and they start hallucinating, and then they do things like, I forgot my car keys, and they jump out and start swimming.
We saw that. That happened, on that one. Like I said, we saw this. Was it I Shouldn't Be Alive? Or it was a show like that. And it was like a bunch of friends, and their ship sank, and they were all on a lifeboat, and that happened. Like the dude started like drinking. I think he did drink salt water, didn't he? And he started going crazy.
Yeah, he said, I forgot my car keys.
And he just jumped in the fucking ocean.
Yeah.
And started
swimming, and then the sharks got him. Sharks were waiting.
Yeah.
The sharks, they said they saw the sharks just eating him. Pow, 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 on the surface.
I can't imagine. That's got to be like one of the fucking worst things ever. You would never be able to like unsee that.
Sharks were waiting because they were in a rubber life raft, and the sharks could smell them through this fucking rubber life raft and shit.
Lubber raft.
And, they were just saying fuck it. They were so weak they were just pissing in the bottom of the fucking rubber life raft. Then they'd get desperate, reach down in there, and they had blood and pus coming out of their fucking sores in their legs, and they just get they say fuck it, reach down, and just drink the fucking
oh my god, it was so
gross.
Drink
right out of the fucking bottom of the fucking.
It was so gross.
Dying at sea's the worst. I'm never going to sea. Never.
That's what I mean. I'm just like, fuck that shit.
Nope.
I'm not even going on a cruise ship or nothing.
Nope.
No, thank you.
Nope.
I don't want to be on an episode of that show.
I'll fucking ride around. My dad was in the Navy. He was on the USS Yorktown. The raised Yorktown, and they modernized it. He was in the South China Sea during the Vietnam campaign. He was an electrician, and fucking got guts, man, to be on. Being ex-infantry, I'll ride around fucking choppers with the fucking doors open and shit. You're not getting me on the water. No way.
I don't blame you one bit.
Gonna have the fucking ground. You can get me in the sky and on the ground, not on the water. I got a lot of respect for fucking those dudes, Yeah, mostly it's a cush job, but when it goes bad, it goes really bad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to drown, and I don't want to fucking die in a fucking lifeboat.
I don't want
to be eaten by sharks while you're fucking floating.
That's the worst.
Like a doll's eye.
Yeah, I can't.
That kind of shit,
I can't really think of anything scarier than that. Just like knowing that you're getting eaten.
Getting eaten by you out there, the cluster of dudes floating in the water one by one, being eaten by sharks.
That's like one of the worst things that I can think of. Seriously, that story just like that. Well, I used to have nightmares like that when I was a kid. Like, ugh.
Being on the ocean is very akin to being in outer space.
Yeah, it might as well be.
You might as well be in outer space.
Yep.
You can breathe. That's the only difference. But there's water everywhere, and not a drop to drink.
And there's like a whole bunch of really big creatures swimming around there where you can't see them, and they would really, really like to snack on you. So, no thank you. No thank you, sir or madam.
So you want to shut it down?
Yeah, better, because it's getting to be, it's almost bedtime.
Oh, shit. I've been looking forward to that.
What?
No, I'm just...
Well, no, I got to take a shower and go to sleep because I gotta get up early in the morning. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this show about the Mary Celeste. I had a good time doing this show. This was like a fun topic. Well, it's not fun, but it's kind of depressing. But it's
a good show.
Yeah, I found it like really entertaining. Tammy said you would be praying for aliens in that lifeboat. Yeah, it's like now the aliens can come get me. Please save me. You can even anal probe me if you want. Yeah. But how dare you? How dare you? But Christopher Walken.
How dare you?
Getting anal probed.
Yeah, by a vacuum cleaner hose.
Maybe he's into that. I don't know.
He looks right at the camera.
Allegedly.
He looks right at the camera like this. How dare you? How dare you?
I know.
That
he was so indignant.
That movie, man. That fucking movie I can't understand it.
I don't either.
I could not understand that fucking movie.
What a weird fucking movie that was.
What was it called?
Communion.
What the fuck? What the fuck were they thinking? That movie.
I really don't know. I
heard that book is quite fucking wild, but
it's pretty crazy. I read it a long time ago.
To make a movie based on that, that's like.
And to put Christopher Walken in it, of all people.
Walken. Yeah, it's fucking funny.
I mean,
and it really wasn't a horror movie. It wasn't
not.
Anything.
No,
it was just.
I'm not really sure what kind of movie it is.
That?
It's just like a fucking oddity.
I'm glad that I did not see that under the influence of LSD. I'd have been very disturbed.
Ben said that book was a blockbuster, so they had to make a movie of it. Yeah. It was. Everybody was talking about that shit. I think there was even like commercials for it on TV, back in the '80s. I remember. It was that and the commercials for fucking
from the 90s.
Dianetics. Oh yeah, maybe it was.
From the 90s, I think.
I can't remember when it came out. But yeah, all right. So I guess we're gonna shut it down so I can go to sleep and get up at 5 in the morning. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. We're taking the day off tomorrow, but we'll be back on Friday evening for the Sidetrack show. Probably. Are you gonna want to go to Mannequins Friday night?
We'll see. Probably. We'll see.
Because they're instituting their new thing.
Yeah, we'll go.
So maybe we'll
go.
We'll do that. So we'll do some like pre-gaming and talk to you guys. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys again on Friday evening. And thanks for dropping by. Remember to like and share and comment and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you guys again on Friday night. Bye.